And there are moments that a lot of us in South Africa and a lot of people in the world will be aware of. Mm-hmm. And particularly the Zozibini gowns.
Yes.
The black and white beaded dress. Today my guest is Biji Gibbs, the visionary behind Biji La Moisson de Couture.
Then she was top 3. Then she was like one of the last 2,
Yeah.
And then when they announced she was the winner, I'm telling you something, I screamed so loud. I think that the windows nearly shattered out of the frames of the house. I went running down the passage. I woke my hubby up and it's like, she won. It was goosebumps moment.
Beautiful.
It was like, who'd have thought? I had a horrible experience when it came to my wedding gown, where on the day of my wedding, I walked down the aisle in a gown that I wasn't happy with.
Have you ever failed in getting a person to agree to your view?
Yes.
In how you agree? Well, that's a significant failure. Isn't
Exactly.
it? Like, how do you handle that?
You know what the thing is? It's like you cannot be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
You can be everything to some people, but you can't be everything to everyone.
Like, how does the topic of failure feel to you when you have to think about your journey?
When I went to primary school, my mom, because I'm the Laat Lamiki, my mom, she kept me back from going to preschool or whatever. So I literally went into grade 1. And in grade 1, I couldn't speak a word of English.
Biji, I am so happy you're here. I must tell you a story. When I texted you to check if you'd be happy to come to Cheers to Failure, my heart was pounding. Because I respect you so much.
You.
And I
That's
imagine
crazy.
your schedule is wild. And so when you texted, I sent you a voice note, very emotional. I was properly crying.
Are you
out of
serious?
excitement. Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be part of
I'm
it. Why would I not want to be here?
You are Biji.
Oh, you're so sweet.
So
Thank you.
it's such an honor to have you here. And as we're preparing, I asked you if you are comfortable to talk about failing, especially given the standard at which you work. How does the topic of failure feel to you when you have to think about your journey?
Can I tell you something? A couple of years ago, it might have scared me a lot.
Yeah.
But you know what? At the end of the day, it's part of everybody's journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like every time you fail, you got to pull yourself together. You got to pick yourself up. You got to carry on.
Yeah.
So failure is part of the process.
Yeah.
So it was kind of odd. I read the topic and I was like, failure? Okay. And then when I sat and thought about it, and I was like, you know what? It makes sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense because, you know, I cannot tell you how many times, and I think not just me, probably just about everybody that I can think of will have some story behind the scenes to tell about, you know, something that went wrong, something that didn't happen the way that it was meant to happen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of part of the process. And at the time, it's
Definitely.
devastating and it can be really scarring. And sometimes failures take longer to sort of recover from than other times, you know, and we pray for more of those that if we're going to be getting failures, that we pray that we sort of
able to
recover a lot faster, you know.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes, you know, failures hit you hard.
Yeah, and
you know?
it's there to teach us many lessons
And
we
humbling lessons.
wouldn't otherwise learn. So
Exactly.
how do you define failure in terms of your upbringing? How were you raised, and what was your relationship with failure growing up?
You know what? I can't really say a specific thing, you know. I must be honest. It's like my parents were always very supportive. But I would say the craziest thing, maybe it's sort of unrelated in a way, but something that's just sort of coming to mind now when you're talking about that is when I went to primary school, my mom, because I'm the Laat Lamiki, my mom, she kept me back from going to preschool or whatever. So I literally went into grade 1. And in grade 1, I couldn't speak a word of English. And she stuck me into, or both my parents obviously put me into an English-speaking primary school. I did not understand a single thing that was being asked of me. So I felt really sort of huge anxiety and panic about the fact that I didn't know what was going on. And I would have teachers standing in front of me with books in front of me, and they'd be whacking the ruler on the table and on the words, and I didn't know what they wanted from me, you know. So I would say that was the biggest anxiety as a childhood that I had, was going into a school and not understanding how to speak English, you know. So, and I can't actually even really tell you how I learned to speak English, because one minute I couldn't, and then the next minute I could.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And
So,
how does that feeling show up now?
you know something, it's like you feel so isolated.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you feel, let's say you enter a room that you're not comfortable in, and you can kind of feel the eyes on you, which is exactly what happened to me in primary school. Eyes on you, and you get that anxiety that it's like you're afraid to say something, because if you say something incorrectly, then people are going to laugh at you. People are going to shrug their shoulders. They're going to giggle behind your back, and you know. And at the end of the day, it's all at your expense.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so many life circumstances happen. You go to events where you may be a little out of your comfort zone. You know, you kind of have that recurring sensation coming through, you know.
Yeah.
And so it just depends on the rooms that you enter into.
Yeah.
You know?
And you've got to find a way to just break
know,
out and talk to someone. And after that feeling is gone.
Exactly. As soon as you connect with one person, it actually just helps a lot to dissolve that anxiety.
You settle, yeah.
But the thing is, the more often you go out on your own, and the more often you just sort of take the chance and you just be brave, like the first time I traveled overseas on my own. And then getting onto the metro in Paris, and also not understanding, or luckily enough people speak English, you can get by, you know, not that they're happy about you speaking English or whatever, but somebody's going to understand you. But getting onto the metro, never having used you know, the metro before, and then learning how to read the map. But at the same time, once you've actually conquered that, 2-3 days into it, you actually feel so proud of yourself. And you go, yay, that's amazing. And then the next thing, you become the tour guide.
So let's get into the work that you do.
Yeah.
You dress incredible people. And there are moments that a lot of us in South Africa and a lot of people in the world will be aware of. And particularly the Zozibini gowns.
Yes.
The black and white beaded dress.
Yep.
And the other is it called the sunrise?
It's like the sunrise. It was inspired by the sunrise, or the, you know, the sun rising over the waters, because, you know, she's born in the Eastern Cape. So in the Eastern Cape, they wouldn't be experiencing sunsets over water; they'd be experiencing sunrises. So and that's what inspired the dark blue at the hem, and then, you know, right through to the silver at the neckline.
So
when 8 colors in there.
So when I think about just how fragile beading is, you must have been very brave to go for those two pieces.
Stupid.
I'm going to call you brave. But what were the moments where you thought of the design, and were there oopsies on the journey where...
So many.
Go for it. Go wild. You are here for those moments.
Me, so many. It's like, look, let's put it this way. Turning back the clock to when Werner actually brought Zozi to come and see me, you know, about designing her gown for Miss Universe. Obviously, the pressure was on. And at the same time, it was like, I wanted to make a mark. I wanted to show what we're capable of, you know. So now, true to form, Werner would arrive with a whole bunch of inspiration.
And Werner is an agent.
He is the creative director of Miss South Africa. I think not anymore. I think he's just recently resigned. I think he's moving on to the Miss Supranational team. I'm not sure. But in any case, so he came through with Zozi, because he would obviously be taking care of her styling, etc., getting her prepared for Miss Universe. So when he came through with her, they were both sitting on the couch and very sort of excited and in sort of trepidation of, you know, the pageant that we were preparing for. And when Vanna showed me all those reference pictures and whatnot, it was literally just a matter of him showing me a lot of these sort of Masai Mara type capes, these beaded capes, and wanting to be different and whatever. And I still said to him, and I said to Zosi, it's like, look, you know, the tribal thing is amazing, but we're on an international stage. We've got to make it more contemporary. So that was where, you know, sort of working with the bugle beads or whatever, sort of was born, the thought of that, because it just wasn't tribal.
Yeah.
You know, the beads themselves weren't tribal.
Yeah.
And so from there, then it was a matter of that those beads really look like water if you have a mass of them lying next to each other. So, and then it was like we had to think about the story, because Miss Universe loves to hear a story behind a dress and not just a dress. So you don't just arrive on the stage and, you know, have a dress and it has no meaning. So they love to have meaning behind it. So again, so the pressure was there to try and figure out what we were going to do that was going to have meaning. So it was like talking about the fact that the beads look like water. It's like, what looks like water? And it's like, well, now, you know, the ocean.
Yeah.
She's on the East Coast, or she's born on the East Coast. And that's how the story evolved. And then we were like, okay, well, then how are we going to actually make this water story make sense? So then, you know, Van had come to me in the past about talking about doing sunset dresses, any dresses that were inspired by sunsets for other pageant, you know, contestants before. So I just sort of said, well, why don't we just look at it at the concept of doing the dress that's sunrise? So, and the thing is, and then as soon as I started processing it, because as I start talking to people, I just sort of get inspired, and I don't know where the inspiration necessarily comes from, but I suddenly had this concept or this idea of making the beads look, you know, sort of ombre from the silver through to the blue.
Yeah.
And it was like, already the anxiety sat in my stomach. It was like, how am I actually going to make this dress look like, you know, ombre? Because beads don't come in ombre shades, you know. So it's like you've got your solid silver, you've got different shades of silver.
And the count of the beads that ought to flow into the next.
Exactly. And then my next anxiety was like, I know this is going to take a huge amount of handwork. And at the time, we were crazy busy. I had massive orders that we were busy getting ready to go out beside this. And it was also a situation where I couldn't get bugle beads at the time. So now bugle beads were an issue. So I tried to get hold of my suppliers in India, and it was around about the time of Diwali, and I was not getting them to reply. So no one was getting back to me, and no one was really interested in hearing from me.
And at this point, are you keeping Verna informed, Zosibini informed?
Of course. I mean, the thing is, I didn't need to keep him informed. He'd be on my case. He'd be like, what's happening? What's happening? What's going on? You know?
Yes.
So in any case, then I was trying to get hold of the guys in India to try and get the beading and whatever, and I just wasn't getting any responses from them. And then eventually I got so frustrated that I ended up getting hold of a guy that I'd met on one of my previous journeys to India, who had a team of beaders that actually, you know, do the beading work or whatever there. Whereas I have someone that I deal with here. And I've been working with my guy for 25, 30, or going on 30 years, I think even.
Yeah.
And I knew I could trust him. And he, you know, having worked together for such a long time, if I was to explain to him how to do something, you know, he's already past that whole concept of not listening to women, et cetera, So he was quite prepared to sort of learn.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we couldn't get the beads.
Yeah.
So eventually I had to now sort of take a chance, get hold of this guy that I knew in India and ask him if he would be able to actually do the job for me. And then, of course, the anxiety came again, because it's like, how am I going to explain to these guys that this has got to be done in an ombre type of fashion, you know? And then when I started talking about ombre beading, they were like, well, it can't be done. And I'm like, it can be done.
Oh, my gosh, it took so long to get through to them, and then they don't believe it can be done.
They kept sending me samples, but by the time they did sample beading for me, they'd like beaded like half a panel.
Oh,
And I'm
my
like, you
gosh,
guys
yeah.
have wasted so much time. Like, why don't you just do a tiny little panel, you know, like a strip, like 1 inch strip.
Yeah.
So my goodness me, we went backwards and forwards and it took weeks to get through to them. Actually, they didn't even, I didn't even get through to them until eventually, to prove a point, I took just line paper, like examination pad, and I took 8 crayons. And I literally colored these in, counting in the colors, counting out the colors to actually work out the transition between all the shades. And I colored this this foolscap. I took a couple of sheets just like as tall as I was.
Yeah, yeah.
Colored them all in. And then, of course, you have something that looks like Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat happening.
Yeah.
And then I cut the strips and I
Yeah.
physically shuffled them up and down.
Yeah.
And then I pasted them. And then I took
Yeah.
a photograph of it next to me. And I sent it to them and said, don't tell me it can't be done. It can be done.
It can be
you know?
done.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, they did it. The samples still weren't coming out right. And
Yeah.
eventually I was so frustrated. I thought, this guy is being so arrogant because he doesn't want to hear me. He doesn't want to listen to me.
At this
you
point,
know?
are you wishing you had gone for a simpler design, Biji?
You
Because
know what?
sometimes we have these ideas in our heads that are so beautiful
I know.
until you have to make them happen.
I know.
And halfway through,
But
like,
I
I've
don't
had
shy away
moments
from
where I
challenges
think,
like that. I don't know if I've ever really, in any gown that I've ever designed, kind of gone, gosh, I wish I'd have done it simpler.
really?
No. You know what?
You're
I actually really
brave.
enjoy the challenge.
Okay, brilliant.
You know, I mean, there are sometimes if I've been awake for 43 hours at a stretch
Yes,
or whatever,
yeah.
and you know, then I kind of go, oh gosh, you know, it's like I didn't realize this was going to take as long as it has.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But I can't really say that I've ever really gone back and gone, I wish I would have done a simpler. Because the thing is, how do we grow then? You know, it's
you're
just
right.
okay, fine. So now
Yeah.
you cross that hurdle,
Yeah.
and once you've actually crossed that hurdle, then the next time you're going to work on something, I've now learned how to do it.
Yeah.
So the next time I apply myself, it'll be easier because now I've learned from how. And besides, I mean, if we always shy away from like challenges, how are we ever going to expand? How are we ever going to innovate? I mean, that's where the innovation sits.
Comes, of
you know?
course, of course. And so now, fast forward, Zozibini wins.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling? Were you you were at home watching
You
the
know what?
competition?
I was, as I said, I had so much work on at the time and I was barely getting any sleep. And as it was a gamble. We didn't know how well or not well she was going to do.
It
I knew she
photographed
had it
beautifully.
I knew she had it in her to win, you know? So in any case, and I just sort of thought to myself, you know, I prayed that she would make top 10 because if she wasn't going to make top 10, no one was going to see it. For all the effort that went into it, no one was going to see it because only the top 10 girls actually feature on the stage, you know? So anyways, and I thought, you know what? Let me at least watch the pageant until she gets knocked out. You know what I mean? And I wasn't being fatalistic.
No, but you were just managing your expectations.
I wanted to sort of watch it, and I thought, okay, I'll watch it until she gets knocked out. If she gets knocked out, if she does well, if she gets top 5, yay, then we're already winning. You know what I mean? And then, of course, we just watched and watched and watched. And my daughter and myself were both watching it. And my goodness me, it was like, and every time, you know, she made top 5, it was like I was at the edge of my seat and I was so excited and I had goose flesh and whatever. And then she was top 3. Then she was like one of the last 2, you know,
Yeah.
And then when they announced she was the winner, I'm telling you something, I screamed so loud. I think that the windows nearly shattered out of the frames of the house. I went running down the passage. I woke my hubby up and it's like, she won. It was goosebumps moment. It was like, you know, who'd have thought?
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And I mean,
you did
I think she was
brilliant
just so
job.
unique.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that she actually embraced her natural hair, I loved that about her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, you
she was
did it
so
amazing.
confident
I
and-
think it was just every part of her
Yes.
was well executed.
100%.
Every part of her was well executed. Now, I want to talk about a project that failed and you thought that failure was a blessing in disguise, or a job you would have pitched for that you didn't get that you wanted so badly, and when that thing didn't come through, or, you know, anything that you may have wanted to work like this but didn't, and in the end you thought, okay, maybe it's better it didn't work out like that?
I really can't think of anything right now. It's like, it's so weird. Sorry, I might sound boring, but
Not at all.
right this second, nothing's really coming to mind. I bet you that when this podcast is done and I walk off set, I think I'm actually going to kick myself and go, why did I not think of that thing? You know what? Probably in hindsight, many times, where, gosh, I wish I'd have, had the opportunity to, for example, have a collection, let's say going back to when I went to New York, and this was many, many years ago when my daughter was still little, and I wanted
You'd gone to New York
to be a world famous designer by the time I was 21.
And you did become.
At 21, how naive was I? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you know what? At the same time, it's like the experience, and I think probably the fact that I wanted to be world famous by the time I was 21 and it never happened for me the way I thought. So it's like life just offers you knocks and knocks and knocks and goes, not so fast, not so fast, not so fast. And you sitting in the corner or in the wings, and you kind of go, oh, I wish that was me, I wish I could, etc., etc., etc. But I think as years have gone by, or let's say in recent years, I've learned to stop chasing that dream, and I've kind of made peace with the fact that I'm a couture designer. Thank you. You try doing sometimes, I don't know, it's like whatever it is that I've done outside of couture has sometimes failed, or it's cost a lot of money, or just hasn't been where my heart has been.
And what in those moments when you pursue things outside of couture, is it a Biji idea? Is it a friend saying, come on and do
very
this?
Much
brands
so.
Inviting you to do things a different way?
Yeah, I don't think so much brands inviting you to do things, because the thing is, I was invited to collaborate with L'Oréal Paris last year.
I remember.
Which was so cool. It was the most surreal experience, and it was amazing. They were an amazing team to
How many
work with.
people did you have to dress?
Initially, when they approached me, they said, Biji, it has to be 30. And I had 6 weeks. And I was like, 30? How am I going to pull off 30 garments in 6 weeks? This is crazy. And it turned out being 40. I think on the onset.
I thought you were going to say it turned out to be 15.
No.
Okay, from 30 to 40 in 6 weeks.
It was like I kind of figured something was up when they sort of approached me, when they were just sort of giving me names. And the other challenge was the fact that they weren't runway models. So it was like, these are all going to be personalities.
Just regular people.
Influencers, you name it. So I was having short, tall, curvy, straight, every figure shape under the sun.
And each person with a unique design.
And expectation.
Okay.
Because at the same time, these are people that are like out there. And now you're dealing with, in essence, what could be. And I have to say, they were all divine to work with. Really, really. But you have the potential of dealing with 40 divas, And you go,
it's a lot dealing with just one.
Well, you know what? Let's put it this way. To be fair, it's like I really can't say that I have an issue with it, because sometimes, like the diva thing, a lot of people love putting labels on things, and it's like calling brides bridezillas and whatever. And there's a reason why people label it that way. But then at the same time, I think sometimes people just find their voice. Eventually, and then they've had enough of people giving them advice and unsolicited advice, and then people sort of push back a little. And I think it's a little bit of a diva thing as well. Sometimes people just offer too much advice, and sometimes they say it can't be done, and then the diva-esque would say it can be done, and I'll show you it can be done. So I actually identify with that sort of mindset in a way, and I actually think that challenging sort of personality is what makes them vibrant. It makes them interesting.
Have you ever failed in getting a person to agree to your view?
Yes.
in how you are. Well, that's a significant
course.
failure. Isn't
Exactly.
it? Like, how do you handle that?
You know what the thing is? It's like you cannot be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
You can be everything to some people, but you can't be everything to everyone, you know? And I think once you realize that, it's like, but if you don't approach it from an arrogant perspective, so it's just like, I know when somebody comes to me, because I had a horrible experience when it came to my wedding gown, where on the day of my wedding, I walked down the aisle in a gown that I wasn't happy with.
Yeah.
So I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself,
gown, you walked down the aisle on a gown that you were not
as
happy
a designer,
with.
where you know people are going to be, you know, that anxiety, that childhood anxiety that I was
Yeah.
talking about when
Yeah.
when I was little, and then everyone's eyes are on you and you're not measuring up, or you know, you don't fit in or whatever. I literally felt like that walking down the aisle, you know. It was like, it was probably one of the single most sort of depressing sort of scenarios if I look back at it. But at the same time, every single time I have a client that challenges me or questions every step, because you get them, you know, you get people.
I wasn't
that have got
that client. Please tell
not
me I
at
was
all,
not.
Not at all. You were divine. In fact, we chatted more than we did actual fittings. No, not at all. But you know, at the same time, it's like you deal with a lot of strong personalities.
Yeah.
And some people that are just super controlling, you know, and they want to understand and they want to know every process and they question every step of the process, which is sort of, you know, you sort of struggle for your identity in times like that. But you know what, at the same time, I've got to take myself back to when I was having my wedding gown made, and, you know, that whole idea of walking down the aisle in a dress that I wasn't happy in. So I deal with challenging clients in that way, thinking that could have been me, could have been me. And, you know, I step back, I try as far as possible to step back and go, listen. Listen to what this person is asking you. Listen to what this person, what their stresses are. You know, don't be arrogant about the fact that they're asking these questions.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's communication. So it's really a matter of making people feel like they can be involved in the process.
Yeah.
And the more you involve them in the process and explain to them what's happening, so I kind of almost preempt that.
Yeah.
So usually when I have someone coming in for a fitting, and you probably remember that yourself, as you come through with a fitting, explain, this is what you expect, even beforehand. This is what you expect for your first fitting. This is what you expect for the next one and the next one.
Yeah.
And then as you start fitting, I haven't sorted this out. Today we're concentrating on this, you know. So, and I think with that, also opening the doors and saying, I welcome you to actually ask questions. If there's something you're not sure of, ask me. I'm okay with it. It's fine, you know. And then when people feel heard and they feel understood and they feel comfortable, then you're actually already halfway, you know, sort of succeeding. And then people relax. And when they relax, then they trust you. And when they trust you, the results usually speak for themselves.
So let me ask you about the bridal process.
Yes.
Because I haven't been a bride in a very long time. Do you find it easier or harder to have the mother of the bride there in the process of design, fitting, and completion of the gown? Because I can imagine sometimes, you know, mothers with their daughters and their daughters wanting their personality to shine and their desires to be honored. And the moms also have desires and you know, it's their children, it's their child that's getting married.
You know what, to be honest, I can understand the moms, being a mom myself. I understand the mothers wanting to have the best for their children or their daughters, let's say. So I do understand that perspective. So I try and be very respectful, and there's where the listen to what's being said comes through. And I think in that time that you sit back and you listen to the conversation that's being had. Allow them to have their little squabbles and all the rest of it. Let the bride say what she wants to say or what she wants to have, and let mom have her piece to say. When mom feels hurt, at the same time, she also backs off, because when she feels understood, and then usually I would then take a diplomatic stance on that and kind of go, okay, and then look at it from an analytical, from a design perspective, and say, look, if it was my decision to make, and I take it off both of them, if it was my decision to make, this is what I would do, and this is how I think that is going to be achieved. And if mom has a super valid point in terms of whatever, I would usually back her, but I try to be as diplomatic as I can, with bride. And at the same time, you do have some, maybe not so much even mothers of the bride. You do have situations where the mother of the bride has got expectations and whatever, but sometimes more so the mom-in-law, future mom-in-law,
really
can be more of a challenge than a mom, because you see, the thing is, she's getting married to my son.
Oh my God! They're invited to come to the dress and fittings.
You know what? I don't want to say nothing surprises me, but very little surprises me nowadays.
Oh, really?
So it's like, I think I've probably been in most scenarios, with. Sometimes people arrive for the first consultation with like 15 people. It's like a tea party.
Yeah.
And then you can't actually get down to what the bride actually wants, because there's the noise of everyone having their opinion.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
No, as I said, I look at it from a design perspective, and I try and keep the personality out of it a little, and kind of just bring it back to, we hear about the design. We hear about, you do want to look your absolute best. Make mom feel assured that I've heard her. And where her opinions might hold solid ground, like maybe the bride wants to show off too much skin, and I might not. I cannot judge. You know what I'm saying? It's not my space to judge. At the end of the day, I can design anything you want. If you want to have nipple caps and a G-string, that's up to you. Do you know what I'm saying? The thing is, I can be as daring as you want me to be. So I just listen to what the mom's saying, what the bride's saying, and then you kind of just bring in a little bit of perspective. And kind of go, okay, that's great. I can do that for you. How do you think your mom-in-law is going to feel about it? How do you think the elders at the wedding are going to feel about it? Are you comfortable with them having something to say about it? And at the end of the day, it boils down to, if the bride loves her dress, it's going to show on her face. People are going to judge you irrespective. You are not going to have the dress of everybody's dreams.
Wow, I like that.
So the thing is, if you're going to walk down the aisle,
you're never going to have a dress of everybody's dream.
Your dress.
I like that.
And you're not going to appeal to everybody there. There's going to be an auntie or a cousin or somebody that's going to go, why has she gone for something like that? And the most important thing is, you love the dress. You love the dress. You look amazing. You feel amazing. Nothing else matters. Then you're going to get those comments about, oh, she should have X, Y, Z, and she should have done this and that and whatever. Those comments won't matter. So if, for example, the bride would have listened to mommy and had the dress designed according to mom's, sort of whims or whatever, and the dress was complete, still there are going to be people that are going to say, why did she have that? Why did she have that? And if she didn't feel great about the dress in the first place, then those comments would bother her more going forward in the future, way more than they would have if she just went with what she wanted to do. She's really got to follow her heart.
Got you. So as we wrap up, I want to hear what you would advise designers who want to reach the same level of success as you and even greater with regards to failure. How should they see and feel about failure in order to be successful? What 3 things would you say they should think about and always know?
Hard work never killed anyone.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yeah.
This is not an industry that you can sit there, twiddle your fingers and think that like success is going to happen. So hard work is one. Secondly, don't be afraid to try new things. You're going to fluff up at some point, multiple times. Pull yourself together, chin up, carry on.
Yeah. Pull yourself together, chin up, and carry on.
Exactly.
What a beautiful conversation. It's gone by so fast.
has.
It's been beautiful to sit on this couch and talk about failure with you, Biji. Thank you, Biji. And this
Thank
is
you.
Cheers to Failure.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please won't you do me a favor? Click the subscribe button as well as the notifications button so you know when we've got new content on our YouTube channel. And share it with your friends, whoever you believe needs to know that failure doesn't mark the end, but is filled with beautiful, glorious lessons we all need to have. Thank you.